another, I don't want this necessarily to be, don't tell anybody this, because this kind of just needs to stay between you and me and the investigator, Stephen Davis, but they tortured Mike Anderson, my other co-defendant. And he kept just sticking to the truth, but they were torturing him for sticking to the truth. They put him in a burning hot cell that would be so hot that you couldn't even stand on the floor because it would burn your feet. And they'd put it like that for 2 days, and then they'd put it so cold that the water in the toilet would freeze. And he was naked in it. And he wasn't eating, and they put him on a suicide diet. They wouldn't give him any clothing, and they were just driving him nuts, and they were waking him up every 30 minutes so that he was getting delirious and sleep deprived, and his beard was growing out. He was just looking like a crazy man, just beat to death. And I was 2 cells over watching all of this happen, and they're just trying to get him to testify against me, and he wouldn't. But then, they took him to the grand jury, and he told the grand jury, they said, look, this is all just made up BS. This is all just propaganda. I know Schaeffer Cox. Everything that they're accusing him of is false, and all I can tell you is that Schaeffer talked about doing education so that people weren't ignorant about liberty and doing nonviolent activism and stuff like that. Yeah, Schaeffer believes in the right to self-defense, but we all do.
Yeah.
There wasn't a circumstance existed right now that would justify that self-defense. And so Schaeffer said he wanted to be like Gandhi, not like Randall. My co-defendant went to the grand jury and told that to the grand jury. Now, when he did that, he poisoned that grand jury with the truth for the duration that it was seated. And the prosecution got so mad at him for telling the truth because he was out because they let all the state charges got dropped and he got out of prison. And then he got brought to the grand jury. He wasn't even in jail, and he told them the truth. And the prosecutor got so mad that he threw Mike Anderson back in prison without any charges.
My goodness.
Using what's called a material witness warrant. Because they couldn't charge him, but they said they abused a material witness warrant to go arrest him and keep him around as a witness. And they just used that to diesel him and to torture him more and to get him to come back to try a second time to get him to testify to the grand jury. Now, I don't know what happened, but I think he refused to testify that second time. Or when they brought him in there and he was all abused and tortured and lost 40 pounds and all sucked up like a skeleton, he could, even if he did change his story, then he couldn't. And I don't think he did. I think Mike stuck to the truth. But what that did is it ruined the grand jury, and it forced my prosecutor, Stephen Skrocki, to forage the indictment. Because I was suspicious that after he'd done that to Mike Anderson, that grand jury wouldn't indict. Because if they'd have indicted, they'd have indicted the first time that Mike Anderson was in front of the jury. Okay, so then they took him back. So what I did is I put in a FOIA request for the documents that the government is required to keep to prove up a grand jury indictment, because the grand jury indictment doesn't have a signature of a grand juror. It just has a signature line, and it just has a /S/. And the prosecutor could have just put that in there and forged the electronic signature of the grand jury foreperson. Now, they have to keep records so that I can go back and make sure that it's not a forgery. The records that they have to keep is the grand jury ballot and the return. Okay, that's one record under Rule 6F. The other thing that they have to do is the grand jury foreman has to come into court in person in front of a magistrate judge and say, I'm the grand jury foreperson, and here's the indictment, the true bill, and we're returning it on behalf of the grand jury. So I FOIA'd those 2 documents, and I fought with the Department of Justice for 2 years to get them to answer this. They gave me the runaround for 2 years, and then finally they sent me a letter admitting that no such documents exist. That means that the indictment that Skrocki, the prosecutor, gave to the judge and put on the record was a fake, a bluff, a phony, illegal. And that means that everything that happened after that, my trial and everything, was like imaginary, like it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
Because if that indictment didn't happen on the record, it didn't happen. And that's where we're at right now. So then I sued them in district court here, pro se, and and won that lawsuit and got them to double down because I wanted them to give me a certificate of lack of record instead of just a letter saying that they didn't have it. I wanted them to certify that they didn't have it. Yeah. So it would be self-authenticating evidence to take into court. I got them to certify it on the record as a result of that lawsuit. Now, what I'm working on, and this is where Stephen Davis comes into play, I'm trying to get Stephen Davis to do a thorough and exhaustive search of the docket in my case and anywhere else that he could possibly look, and then give me an affidavit as a competent, qualified investigator that says, I searched high and low for this indictment, it cannot be found, it's not there. I searched high, not for the indictment, I searched high and low for the grand jury foreperson coming into court on the record before a magistrate judge and giving it to him, and I can't find it.
All right, Mr. Cox, Mr. Cox, Mr. Davis.
The reason I want that from Stephen Davis, is because I want to have that right now, because then if we file this motion in court, I don't want this call is from a federal prison. The prosecutor to go back in there and falsify records.
Yes.
Or fake a return and backdate it or something like that, because they're doing stuff that crooked in this.
Yes.
In this case. So I'm trying to protect myself against the prosecutor's ex post facto prestidigitation with the record. And that's what I'm trying to get Stephen Davis to write up and send to me, is that affidavit.
Well, he's here on the phone line with us right now. Go ahead if you have any questions.
Well, the main thing is that this is the perfect basis for a 28 USC 2241 writ of habeas corpus, because you're being held without the legal authority, and you can put in it, specifically put in it, that the grand jury did not sign it, and there is no evidence of the grand jury signing it, and that you want an evidentiary hearing in which the members of the grand jury will be called as witnesses so they can testify, we didn't sign anything. That solves the problem of the prosecutor trying to forge something.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, please continue to pray. Go ahead.
We got 20 seconds left on this call. Stephen Davis, you need to work on getting an attorney call set up with me so that you and I can discuss this at length. Can you do that?
Certainly. I'll give it a try.
Okay.